and welcome. You're watching Head to Head on uatv. I'm Antonina Antosha. Recently, Ukraine's parliament has voted on the bill on deoccupation and reintegration of Donbas into law. The bill was introduced by the President Poroshenko himself and was voted for in the first reading in just 2 days. But the second reading took much longer, as almost 700 amendments to the bill have been introduced. After taking a close look at all of them, the bill finally got much-needed votes. Now, what does this bill mean for Ukraine internally and on the international arena? And most importantly, how this bill will affect Russia and its actions in Ukraine? To tell us in detail, we're joined in the studio today by Maria Ionova. She is the deputy head of the committee with the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine. Hello, and thank you for joining.
Hello. Thank you for inviting me.
You're always welcome. So what does this bill mean for Ukraine, the bill on reintegration and the occupation of Donbas?
First of all, I would like, if you allowed me, to say a few words about really the procedures.
Sure.
As I think that it's really very important, and the practice which we had before, I mean, I think that in this context, the necessity and the such serious issue we discussed, really it was more than 700 amendments. And I think that it's really a democratic way of discussion. Sometimes this discussion, of course, were very hot, sensitive, and really very
in
open.
Ukrainian parliament, it gets hot a lot of the time.
It's a democracy, and that is why we also accepted, and I think that it's a good way forward anyway. But really, we were expecting, we saw that some factions would like to break this process, yes, to speak more, to discuss more a little bit. But at the final, we have 280 votes, and this draft bill was adopted. And of course, for us, as you have mentioned about Russians' reaction, I mean, we have heard it, and of course they didn't like it, and that is why it means that probably we are looking in the correct
feedback from Russia already,
direction.
Right?
Yeah, yesterday we have heard some statements. You remember they would like to have some also about the agreement on mutual cooperation between Ukraine and Russia. But I think that the main issue is that that's step by step, that this draft bill about particularities of state policy on ensuring state sovereignty of Ukraine over temporary occupied territory in the Donetsk and Luhansk Oblast is adopted. And also we put Crimea in this bill. We are looking forward, the president will sign it. And of course, if we will talk more detail, that correct terminology is already here in this draft bill. And for us, that Russia is aggressor, and they will answer and they will pay for all this damages, circumstances, according to Geneva Convention. Mm-hmm. For us, this legal status is really, really very important.
All right. So if I got you the right way, the bill officially and legally claims Russia to be an aggressor nation.
Yes.
And now it gives Ukraine a chance to actually defend itself on the international arena and apply to courts of justice.
First of all, if we are talking about armed forces, so the terminology that we use now, that the armed Ukrainian armed forces has been resolved in a legal way, and Ukraine's right to self-defense has been confirmed finally. And it means that it was confirmed, of course, according to the Article 51 on a statute of United Nations chapter. And of course, the main issue which also we had a hot discussion, illuminate Ukrainian soldiers. So it eliminates any legislative conflict, and so we will legally protect our soldiers because
How would you be able to legally protect your soldiers? By doing what?
Because Russia is aggressor and armed forces are allowed to self-defense,
to tackle the actions of an aggressor nation. Am I correct?
Tackle?
Yeah, to fight the actions of the...
No, we are not fighting, we are defending.
Okay, so we're defending. Does this mean that we don't have the anti-terrorist operation anymore?
It means that now the legal status of the Ukrainian armed forces has been changed. It means that on the national level, there will be a coordination center. I will not tell you the details in a military way, but it also means that we will have a coordination united center for criminal investigations, Ukraine against Russia. And also in this issue, for me, really, this Geneva Convention, which is violated more than 3.5 years, and every time when we are talking with our international partners and with the lawyers, they also realize that it's first conflict in the 21st century when any article of Geneva Convention are violated. Yesterday we have met with the ambassadors and with the people, detainees who were released at the end of December, and they were telling really very in a detailed way how their rights, even as a hostage, has been violated, and that is why this bill has been changed, so named Donetsk and Luhansk like republic. Now it's a new terminology like Russian administration. Yes. Mm-hmm. So that is why it's also really very important that it's Russian occupational administration, which will put an end to the use of the name of, as we usually call it, like pseudo-republics.
Okay. Speaking of coordination centers, of course, clearly there have been a lot of critics to the bill, to the draft bill, and some of them have stated that the fact that these coordination centers for the military forces are going to appear, that this bill is just giving more power to the president instead of actually defending Ukraine.
As the president is responsible for as he has a strategy.
Yeah, he's the chief commander of the armed forces of Ukraine. Mm-hmm. Clearly it is. But in the bill, it says that now the president has all the powers to rule the armed forces of Ukraine and command the armed forces of Ukraine without the vote from the parliament. So basically, he's the only one who's going to be in charge.
I think that it's also some speculations. I think that this draft bill is according to Constitution of Ukraine, and as the president would like to fulfill his strategy to return the temporary occupied territories, and in a diplomatic and a peaceful way, we have to make our armed forces in a legal way more stronger, and we have to make our armed forces to coordinate and to make their competence in a legal and correct way according to international law.
Okay. Does the bill or the future law have the actual date when the occupation started?
Yeah, it is on the 20th of February 2014.
On the 20th of February. Okay, and how about what?
As we include also as temporary occupied territory, not only Lugansk and Donetsk Oblast, but also Crimea.
Okay.
And it was also really very important. That is why we can claim on Russian Federation to take responsibility also on the people, on the violating their human rights and also property rights, not only in Donetsk and Lugansk Oblast, but also in Crimea.
Now that the Russian Federation can be legally held responsible for its actions in Ukraine, what effect would this draft bill have on Russia? Could we impose additional sanctions? Could we ask the international community to impose additional sanctions?
I think that we are not stopping to ask international community not only to continue sanctions, to increase sanctions, because unfortunately I think that that was really very important, especially before elections in Russia Federation, to make the sanctions not for 6 months, but for 12 months. But I think that we also can see it on different international platforms as OSCE, Parliamentary Assembly Council of Europe, and NATO Assembly, that our colleagues really realize that now on the first place really is security, not economy. Of course, Russia is still trying to test our international partners and to use the hybrid instruments like in propaganda ways, in electoral process. We altogether know their, if I can say, invasions, and that is why some budgets on cybersecurity in different European countries also has been increased, and that is why also Ukraine is now also modified, and we are trying to change our legislation on cybersecurity, which we adopted recently, but I think that it's still more ahead in the future we have to adopt. But anyway, we are asking our international partners for sectoral to increase more sectoral sanctions. It will be much more painful for Russian Federation, and also that was a good message that USA is helping us with the weapon, with a defensive weapon.
And Canada as well.
And Canada as well, and that is why also this week we have adopted a draft bill for the armed forces, that we can have international trainings on the territory of Ukraine. And in the context of reintegration of Donbas, we also has adopted very important bill on legal status of missing persons according to international humanitarian law, because unfortunately we didn't have this like legal for the families and
internally displaced persons.
No, missing persons.
For the missing persons.
Yeah, for the missing persons. As this is procedure, together we have been working together with the International Red Cross on this bill, and that is why I think that for the families whose members are still missing, it is really very important, as they still have to deal with some property documents, and also, first of all, it's very important that we have to find this person, and this status will be kept till this person will not be found.
Okay. Thank you so much for coming here and clarifying this for us. This was Maria Ionova. She's a Ukrainian member of parliament. Thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.